This is an important message for the black community. Listen, for 400 years, we have struggled. 250 of those years were spent in chains while we were building the foundation of this country and many other countries across the globe. Finally, in 1865, the 13th Amendment came around and luckily we were freed, but only to a certain extent. The next 100 years were spent fighting institutional racism with separate but unequal and the Jim Crow laws that enforced it, and at the same time fighting a society that hated us and simply would not give us a fair shake. Finally, after decades of protest, on paper we received our rights, and slowly but surely much of the country began to accept us as equals. But all of this does not stop the fact that we were set back 350 years. For 350 years, our community has been lawfully held back from growing and prospering. It doesn't take a genius to figure out what that does to a group of people. Much of us were left either broke, unemployed, or barely making it financially. In 1980, just over a decade after the end of the civil rights movement, 31% of black people were living in poverty. Compare this to whites, where only 8.1% of them were living in poverty, or even the overall rate for the country, which was 11.7% in 1980. Nearly 3 times more people in our community were living in poverty compared to the whole country. Nearly 4 times more than the white community. And since then, financially, we are still struggling. In 2011, 27.5% of our community was living in poverty. Compare this to the white community, where only 9.8% of them were living in poverty. The rate overall for the country was 15%. Now, granted, we were fresh off the Great Recession in 2011, but still, even 4 years deeper into this alleged recovery, where, by the way, the richest 1% of the country has gotten 58% of all the income gains, the black poverty rate has dropped only 0.1%. 0.1% in 4 years to 27.4%. And this is still double the poverty rate of the country overall, and nearly 3 times as large as the white poverty rate. Now, another aspect of our struggle is how much crime goes on in our community. According to FBI crime statistics, in 2013, 38% of all murders were carried out by black people, compared to just 31.5% of murders carried out by whites. And keep in mind, there are 5 times more white people than blacks in this country. And despite that, we commit more total murders than whites. And again, according to FBI crime statistics, from 2011 to 2013, 38.5% of people arrested for violent crimes, rape, manslaughter, aggravated assault, and of course murder, were black. But we're only 1/8 of the country, 12.5%. And get this, black males aged 15 to 34, that's just 3% of the country overall. They accounted for the vast majority of the murders we committed. I'm sorry, that is unacceptable. Whatever explanation that you have for this, poverty, slavery, unemployment, racism, I'm sure they all play major factors. Poverty and racism play major roles in some of these crimes. If the youth are broke and they have no job with no hope, and many black youth are, over half of recent black high school graduates are unemployed, yeah, that might make them commit more crime. And why are many of us in these terrible situations? Because, as I explained, our community as a whole was held back by 350 years of slavery segregation. And I'm sure if we got more money and if we got some jobs, some of these crimes would not have happened. But these are definitely not the only reasons why there is so much crime in our community. Whether you are poor or you have no job, or you're so rich you don't even need a job, there's no excuse for murdering anybody, or raping anybody, or assaulting anybody, or robbing anybody. There's no excuse. Listen, I'm sorry that you lost your job. I'm sorry that you cannot feed your kids on this starvation wage called the minimum wage. I'm sorry that you are struggling. This economy has failed this whole country, us even more. But that is not by any means an excuse for you to kill somebody or rob somebody or beat up or rape somebody. No, it is not. Slavery did not make you kill that man down the street. You did. What, you can't stop your finger from pulling that trigger? Slavery made you beat that man up or rob him or rape an innocent woman. No, it didn't. Now, there's a variety of theories as to why we commit so much crime. Economically, much of that situation is not our fault. All of the manufacturing jobs have left the country due to these terrible trade deals signed by our sold-out leaders. And many of those manufacturing jobs happen to be in our community, and therefore they left our community. Black people, as I explained, were already poor and barely making it. So when we designed an economy in the last 30 years that catered to the rich, we were squeezed more than anybody. We get that. But There is no excuse for all of this crime going on in our community, especially when much of it is going against ourselves. According to the FBI, in 2013, 90% of black murder victims were killed by black people. Now, obviously, much of this is because we live together, usually in the same neighborhoods and the same communities, but that only compounds the problem. When we commit crimes, the victim is just another black person, and that person's community. Now, one of the theories as to why we commit so much crime is the family structure. 72% of black kids are raised by single parents, many of them single mothers. However, only 25% of kids overall are raised by single parents. Without a father in many black kids' lives, these kids lose a valuable part of their development. Children need some sort of fatherly presence, and without that presence, there's a huge void that's left unfilled. I believe it is a factor in some of these crimes. However, it is certainly not the main reason behind the huge amount of crimes committed in our community. Now, one other credible theory behind this is a racist criminal justice system. This doesn't explain the crimes blacks actually commit, but crimes blacks are wrongly put in prison for. Discrimination in our justice system certainly exists. Blacks and whites use drugs at similar rates, but yet blacks are 4 times more likely to be arrested for drug crimes, and blacks consistently get longer sentences than the average white of the same age. So it certainly exists. And now, the reason why blacks are much more likely to be arrested for drug crimes is because the cops simply patrol poor minority communities far more than the middle class, upper middle class white communities. That is undeniable. If you try smoking a joint or loitering or some other low-level crime in a black or Latino community, guess what? The police are right around the corner. All it takes is a snitch or a sniff, and they'll be there as soon as you light it up. I see it all the time. I live in a black neighborhood. I see it all the freaking time. But there's only so many police officers. White people use drugs. In fact, many of them use harder drugs, usually more expensive drugs. Cocaine, oxy, LSD, just to name a few. But the cops are only patrolling us. So they'll catch you smoking a joint if you even think about it. But snort coke on your lawn all you want in a white neighborhood because the police are looking for petty crimes in the black neighborhood across town. So it's not a stretch to say that one of the reasons why there are so many black people in prison is that the police are always on our butts and not on white folks. Therefore, of course, more black people will be in prison because we get caught but the whites don't. Credible, and I'm sure it plays a factor. But some whites are in prison for crime. There are some cops left in white communities. Sure, they patrol us more, but the gap is not large enough for criminal justice racism to be the main reason for all these crimes committed in our community. Now, there's other theories that just aren't credible. Some people say it's the rap music, the thug culture, the hip-hop culture. I'm sorry, that sounds ridiculous to me. Most people can definitely tell the difference between a song and actually acting out a song in real life. If you can't, you must be crazy. I'm sorry, that's just not a factor. So look, if you take away something, take away this. We are certainly struggling, no doubt about it. Economically, it is not our fault. The economy as a whole has failed everybody except the rich. And unfortunately, black people just aren't rich. So we are disproportionately affected by this country's terrible economic policies. And we're not rich because our parents weren't rich. And they weren't rich because their parents weren't rich. And they weren't rich because their parents were held down by 350 years of institutional racism. Now people say, whatever. How does your parents' or grandparents' amount of money affect you? Because not everybody can just rise through the economic ranks just like that. You can't become poor or rich at just a snap of your fingers. We're not freaking Harry Houdini. We do work hard, okay? But with no money, most of us cannot go to college. Therefore, we cannot get a good job. So now no matter how many hours we work, or no matter how hard we work, we're not going anywhere. So as I said, being broke and unemployed because of 350 years of racism is a huge factor in the amount of crime that goes on in our community. So is the family structure. So is racism in the justice system, of course. But there's no excuse. There's no excuse. You're probably not going to jail if you do not commit crime. That's simple. Let's handle our business. Get out to vote in these elections and vote for somebody who's actually going to make a change for our community. Cough, cough, Bernie Sanders. Protest for the right causes. And let's try to fix this. The people who run this country, they know they cannot win without our votes. They can't. Use it to our advantage and let's make a change for the better. But if we keep doing what we're doing, allowing all the disadvantages that we have to keep holding us back, we're going to be stuck here forever. Do y'all want that? No, I bet you don't, because I don't want it either. So let's fix what we can fix and fight to fix the things that are further out of our power. Recognize our problems. Don't make excuses for it. Let's try our best to fix those problems. And our community will be in a much better state because of it. Because we got off our butts and didn't allow the 350 years of institutional racism to hold us